The last things we were talking about was like sexual things in relationships. And I just wanted to go over one thing quickly because I was talking to some people about their relationships, and I needed to ask people who are more spiritual and mature and more experienced. Like with some people, I think, uh, whether it's one partner or the other, some people like it's either too little or too much, or they enjoy sexual role plays or dirty talk. So I guess for me, I was curious um, what your insight is on is if that's all part of lust, or does that interfere in having a spiritual connection? Like, do you see what I mean? Because sometimes I try to differentiate between what gets in the way of a spiritual connection and what's just normal or what's lust. So I'm trying to kind of figure out how to ask it in a way that pinpoints
Well, maybe
that.
we backtrack to say, for me, I think it's the same for Dean. When we met, I mean, we met at 40, right? Roughly 40. I was 39, Dean's 41. So we were, more mature, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were more mature. And because what was happening between us energetically in coming together and we were at a spiritual conference and we went with intent, so we were in a state of spiritual, of energetic radiance, let's say,
Yeah.
anyway, because we were at a spiritual conference, we were traveling, we were in at a sacred mountain in Mount Shasta in Northern California. So we
Yeah.
were really radiating our own spiritual energy when we met, and that became quite dominant. So that when we spent time together in the first number of days, there was so much going on between us energetically. It was like electricity. It was
Wow.
like, remember, it was almost
Yeah.
uncomfortable in our bodies. We couldn't it felt like we were being electrocuted. There was so much going on
Wow.
for us that even in the early days when we were in San Francisco, we were together for 3 days. We didn't sleep. We just walked the city and talked and sat in the park and got sunburnt. And like we were kind of out of our bodies a bit. All we could do was hold hands. Like,
Wow.
so there was so much going on energetically between us that sexual energy was like not in the forefront.
Yeah.
Now, but I think
Wow.
that's quite unique. I think maybe that's a nature of coming together of twin flames, of people who are seeking a spiritual partner, of the nature of Dean and I's coming together from exact opposite sides of the planet as we talked at the time in our lives when we did. So
Mhm.
maybe that's unique to our story. But for us, that was way more intense than the sexual energy, although it was present, certainly,
Mhm.
but it wasn't the
No, no.
domineering. And
Okay.
actually, it's never been the domineering force between us
Okay.
because we're doing work together. We're finishing each other's sentences. We're sharing what's going on
Yeah.
in the moment with each other. So we're kind of learning to live as two expressions in a similar vein, in a partnership, in a presence. So it, I don't
That's
know.
beautiful.
So the sex was easy, fun, natural, but also not an issue and not an
Yeah.
overwhelming, loud
Right.
volume thing where
No.
you had, because I'd had, relationships before where it's like it's so loud, you feel like there's a train going through your head. Sexually,
Yeah.
that was not the train going through my head, was a different train this time than ever before.
So
That's
maybe just to expand a little bit for people generally, my feeling is
mhm.
it's all about balance with everything in your life. I mean,
Yeah.
and if sex is dominant and it's addictive and it's you have to have it, and then there's an issue there that needs to be probably
Yeah.
looked at to help bring it into balance. And as far as people role playing, it's whether you're on the same page. If you've got one partner who's really sexually active and that's all they focus on, and the other one's not, then you're going to create
Yeah.
problems. It's all about how you working
Yeah.
together and finding that balance.
I do understand what you guys are saying. And that was so beautiful the way you described that, Rebecca. I think just to give you my opinion on or what I think of it is that sometimes I feel like if I feel, I guess the best word to use is lustful, I almost feel disconnected from the spiritual side. And so that's also why I'm curious about that is, does one take away from the other? People I've dated, like it's, I guess for men mostly, I think they do tend to be more sexual. And so I kind of struggle with that balance and knowing how to not let it interfere with my spiritual growth, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Well,
So,
I think the challenge, we have energy centers in our bodies, the 7 chakras, and
yeah.
you want to have all of the chakras open when you're in union with somebody, right? Not
Mhm.
just the sexual centers. And you need to be in a state of trust and intimacy and
Mhm.
true surrender to have your heart open, right?
Yeah.
During sex, so that your heart is open, but also your higher centers, your connection, your third eye, your ability to see beyond the veil, your crown chakra,
Yeah.
which is connecting with your higher self and with source.
Mhm.
So I mean, I've never studied tantric sex. I imagine that in tantric sex understanding, it would be the full opening of all of your energy centers in
Mhm.
union with another, so that you're using them all, right? So that lust isn't just an isolated experience, it's actually completed by a heart connection and a divine connection.
Okay.
But,
That's
but
well said.
lust is also really about just one thing. It's about satisfying your own needs in that moment.
Mhm.
Whereas, you know, a balanced way or a tantric way um, is nurturing each other's needs, and it's not just about me or the guy getting horny and wanting to get his rocks
Mhm.
off, serving his needs. Pardon my
Yeah.
serving his needs, and that's all he wants. It's about it's a dance.
It's an exchange.
Mhm.
It's an
It's
exchange, and it needs to
Mhm.
be respectful and an experience that is good for both, not just a
Yeah.
one-way thing, which often
Right.
with men, and it's not a criticism, it's just the way
No.
society has programmed us, really, that
Yeah.
you just get the urge and you want to get it done, and it really doesn't matter
that's
how that
why
happens.
it's lovely to be with a mature man who understands, right? Who understands
Mhm.
the and has experience, and who cares about. See, because I feel safe with Dean, because I feel again back to the integrity thing, um, it's easy to what's the word? To become vulnerable, to surrender, to feel safe. And that's
Yeah.
really, really vital. And feeling safe is, I mean, there's so many aspects of that, is, is, is knowing that we will ensure that each other's needs are met.
Yeah. So with that being said, if from just speaking to other people, is there anything that they can do if, let's say, they're not satisfied with what the amount that their partner's giving? Like, do they go to therapy? Do they take a meditation class? Like, I don't know, Dean, like what worked for you in terms of like leaning more to the spiritual side, but how do you not drown it or suppress it, but how do you evolve so that you do come to a place where you're more balanced with your partner? And I mean, is that just a soulmate thing, and is that always going to be an issue for some couples, or is there a way to overcome that and be more balanced?
Well, all I can say is it's a tough one because it's different for everybody. But like
Mhm.
every relationship comes together for the purposes of learning and growing. And so if there's
Mhm.
sexual issues, and there are a lot of people who have had sexual abuse when they were young, which has impacted them in the way they approach and experience and deal with sex and the physicality in their lives. So we got to trust that in every situation, whatever shows up in that relationship
Mhm.
around that is there for the opportunity of growth. For me, I've you know, how can I say? how can I say, it's never been top of mind for me, for a guy, even when I was younger, although I was very out there when I was young and partying and stuff, but it still was not, that was not my focus. It was always bigger than that. And that's just what, that was just me, but that
Yeah,
everyone's going to be, they're not.
but they shouldn't like, you wouldn't recommend like something like some tool or something that they can do, or that's just on their time to.
Well, no, if there's issues around sex, then it's usually going to relate to the person, and they're probably the experience they had when they were young around abuse or certain issues, and then that needs to be sorted out to find that balance. Because when it's running at a subconscious program from a not a very good experience when they were younger, then that's running at a subconscious level, and it's very difficult to find that balance until you understand why you are acting that way or coming from that place, and then to be able to go, oh, I see the connection, and then you have the ability to change it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there are, sorry.
Well, I think it also shows up in relationship to what's been modeled for you.
Mhm.
Whether whether it's your older siblings and certainly your parents' relationship, like what is the love language that was modeled to you, the love expression, and certainly what your experience was in past relationships. How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about your potential partners? It's such an intricate thing that to me it's like it goes back again to understanding yourself and your own origins and what influences and affects you and how that affects your own behavior. I too would say, I was never overtly like driven by sex, but I was certainly driven by the desire for intimacy and affection and partnership, and this that the sex was like a bonus, a benefit of that, a bonus of that. So but I think
Yeah.
everybody's driven by different
Yeah.
things,
Mhm.
and the most important thing, that's why a mature relationship is great, because you're in a more mature relationship with yourself, you understand what drives you and what your own needs are, and then you're able to articulate them. So in a mature
Yeah.
relationship you just talk about it. This is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is how I've been affected,
Yeah.
what happened to me, and why I'm sensitive about things like that. This is the kind of language that appeals to me. This is what doesn't. I think with your
Yeah.
partner, it's another form of the importance of intimate communication,
Mhm.
and then it's the willingness to share
Well,
and experience.
exactly. So just the only way through it is
Mhm.
when issues come up in a relationship, no matter whether it's sex or whatever it is, whenever it comes up, in this case, if it's the physicality or the chemistry or the sexual activity, whatever comes up, there is the opportunity, the spiritual path then is being able to look at it and go, well, we're on a different wave. This is not working for either of us. So
Mhm.
what do we need to do here to find this common ground or this balance within it? So it's doing your own inner work around whatever the issues are that show up, and it's different for everybody.
So if I gave you an example, like a person who is married, has kids, um, and they, on the opposite side, just don't want it, whether it's because they have a lot on their mind or they're a mom, and you see that a lot as people go further into their relationship and their uh, life and marriage life and having kids. So is that also because their chakras, or is it something with them is closed off? Like,
I think that goes back to something like men are from Mars,
right.
women are from Venus.
Mhm.
I feel a woman needs to be cultivated, and that cultivation, that building of trust, that sexual intimacy is a foreplay that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So, I just remember, Dr. John Gray wrote, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. And there was another one called, Venus and Mars in the Bedroom or something. And it is really important to understand a woman's language and what a woman needs in general, what a man needs in general, and then how you relate to that and how that works for you. If a
Mhm.
woman doesn't feel emotionally supported,
Yep.
she will not be interested in making herself emotionally vulnerable to her partner. That's like 101.
Yeah.
If, because a woman has the ability, understanding the differences between men and women are really important, because, a woman is the ability to perceive everything, they say think multidimensionally, so even if, the kitchen's a mess and the bedroom's a mess, and things are upside down, and the kids, it's like then you expect me to have sex on top of all that. But I remember John Gray saying, guys, if you want to have sex with your wife, go clean up the bedroom, because if she can look and see that everything is taken care of, and there's nothing she needs to do on that big long list of things she needs to do, and the bedroom is clean, you're more likely to get lucky, right? But have you cared for her? Have you said that she's beautiful? Have you made her feel special? Did you greet her when you came in the door? You made her feel, those things are really, really important.
Well, that's all foreplay.
It's all for
Yeah.
It's all
It's funny that you guys say that, because I always believe exactly what you're saying, that, people think of foreplay as in the bedroom, but I always thought foreplay is actually a form of romance, and it's everything outside of the bedroom.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And
yes.
It's
yeah,
30 little things that happen during the day. It's
right.
the extra consideration you've given to the other. It's
It's
the,
building up that energy.
And it's
yes,
acknowledging each other. So many relationships, they
Yeah.
go through the motions, they hardly even talk, they're not connected. We realize they're busy and they've got lot, but when that connection is missing, then yes, it's easy to say, I'm not interested, I'm too tired, I've got a headache or whatever, because
Right.
that connection is not there, and that's missing.
Can you give me an example of, I mean, maybe you can't think of it off the top of your head, but how do you stay connected that way outside of the bedroom, so that there is always romance and there is always playfulness
No, I don't know. You
between
could answer that one.
because I'm the playful romantic. That's also
And I'm
probably,
not perfect at it, but I'm aware of it and I do it.
but it is actually the small things that are so big.
Mhm.
The thing, him acknowledging me, or saying thanks, that was a really wonderful dinner, like acknowledging that I did something loving and
Mhm.
caring by preparing a meal that he appreciates, or
I'm very appreciative, and I
yeah,
make sure I let her know often that I appreciate her. I appreciate what she does, appreciate what she does around home. And
Mhm.
so appreciation, acknowledgement. We talk all the time. I'll greet her when she gets home and help her in with with the
he
Mhm.
comes
shopping. I
out
come
to,
out and
when I drive in from the grocery store, he comes out to help carry in. Like
It
that's,
almost sounds like a sense of compassion and kindness
yeah,
that
it's
plays
huge.
a huge role.
my best friend. Why wouldn't I
Mhm.
get the best of me? So many relationships they get the best, the worst of each other. They give each other the worst. Those we love the most, we give the worst. Well,
Yeah.
that's not going to help in the bedroom. So it's about giving her the best. We're best friends, so giving each other the best we have. We know
That's
each other at our
beautiful.
worst, but and we respect when we need to emote or deal with stuff. But ultimately, it's about that connection and giving her my best, because my
Mhm.
father, what I saw, he gave the family and my mum the worst of him, and
Mhm.
he'd give the best of him to everybody else. And so I
Wow.
saw that and thought, that doesn't quite make sense to me. So
How can you be a good guy outside of the house, and when you come home, you have nothing
he
left?
wasn't a bad person. It was
Yeah.
just he just didn't know how, because of his upbringing. And that's, until you do something about it, it will show up in your relationship every day.
What can I ask? Maybe this is off topic, but what triggered when you did see your dad doing that? What was triggered inside of you that you really didn't like? Like,
When I was young, I just was observing it and didn't really understand it. It was only as I was older and I starting to understand the human condition and our programming and how we are molded by our family and our
mhm.
parents, that I began to look at certain things, and it was just certain things my dad did that I instinctively looked at and said, I just don't want to be like that when I'm older. And
Yeah.
then as I grew up, that were things that as I say, I've still had to remind myself. I've still
Mhm.
been reminded, but I'm very committed to the fact that I saw that and I didn't like it. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to be different. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Because I think some people have that growing up, but they don't switch it, or they don't get shifted by it. So I guess I was curious why it happens for some people and not for others. But
It's just a
again,
confidence thing and a commitment to
yeah.
yourself. And we around the same time were committed to the spiritual journey of understanding who I am and why I'm here and where we're going. And that's been the mainstay of our relationship and our personal development. And as you go on that journey, you get all this clarity, and you begin to see how everything in our past is impacting us in the present. And if you're not liking something in the present, no matter what it is, you've got to trace it back to what's happened in the past that's made you that way, to then go to that timeline where you can shift it, which will shift it in today, in the present moment of today.
So you're like a shaman, basically.
Oh, we all are.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, or we're all
yeah,
capable of that.
we're all capable,
sure.
but we have done a lot of work around that, and that's everyone's capable. You got to do the work. You want to get fit and build your body, you got to work in the gym, you got to work your ass off. If you want to get
Yeah.
to the Olympics, you got to work your butt off, no matter what it is. If you want to be good at life, you got to practice, you got to get good at it. You got to practice certain
Yeah.
things.
To be a good person, but also, you're spending the majority of
Mm.
your life with yourself, obviously 100% with yourself and with your partner. So you want to bring the best to that game. I mean,
Yeah.
why wouldn't I try to be the best for myself and the best for Dean? Because and it means being playful. It means being real. It means leaving love notes. It
She's
means
very flirty.
giving special consideration. Dean just had a birthday, making sure his day is special and that he feels
Mhm.
happy. All those things are really, really important. And every investment, and it sounds like it's not, you don't keep score. It's just that every investment in that brings joy. And that's what
Yeah.
we're looking for, is to feel good
Yeah.
about ourselves and our lives. So, you know, we don't keep score in that way. We make sure that it's not like, he didn't do that, so I'm not going to do that. Like those are child.
Because there's an underlying respect and appreciation. But if that wasn't there, then it's almost like people do start keeping score, because, well, I don't feel that from him. So, but as you keep opening each other's hearts, it just keeps flowing and you don't keep score.
Just get
And I do think playfulness and romance is underrated. I don't know if I asked you guys this already, but what's the most romantic or most playful experience, like maybe that you did for Dean, or Dean you did for Rebecca?
wow.
It might be hard to
Just
think of
before
on the
we do that,
spot.
I just wanted to just preface by saying that, talking about your relationship with yourself and loving yourself,
Mhm.
you can only love another to the extent you love yourself. So if you're not connected or not feeling good about yourself, it's very hard, well, impossible almost, to then treat another in the way, because you're limited, because the love you have for yourself is so limited. You can't
Got
express.
an empty tank, nothing to give.
Right, you
But
can
do you
only love
think
another to the extent that you love yourself.
but do you think some people just naturally aren't romantic, or they're naturally not so
Yeah.
playful?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because their
So,
parents wouldn't have been. I mean, our generation of parents who are in their 90s, they weren't really a romantic. Well, your parents were an
mhm,
exception, but it wasn't really a romantic generation. It was a generation of just the men working and bringing home the bacon, and the women being housewives and taking care of the kids, and there
yeah,
wasn't much time or space or for that coming together, and
yeah.
they just didn't do that. And
Well, and my dad was romantic because he witnessed his parents who were not, and he didn't want to be like that.
How is he romantic? I'm
Oh
curious.
gosh, yeah.
touchy, always touching, always I love you,
Yeah.
and
Always acknowledging you. I mean, he remembered as a child, again, he didn't have loving, affectionate parents, kind, but not loving, particularly overtly loving and affectionate parents. And when he went to his grandparents to visit, he spent summers there. His grandfather was a minister and he was very affectionate.
Oh,
And when he'd sit, he said, when you sat next to him, he always put his hand on your leg or on your arm,
mm,
or he would rub your back. And he said, I love that, because of course he wasn't getting it from his parents. And he said, I knew that that's who I wanted to be, because I
wow.
how special touch was. And so
Wow.
for him, it's touch. He's always, and it's not inappropriate or, oh,
Mhm.
not like over the
It's
top.
just nurturing.
It's very nurturing. If
Yeah.
you're sitting next to him, you're holding his hand, or
Oh,
your leg
wow.
hands on his leg, or he's touching you. Even at 92, he's still the same.
Wow.
And with my mom, I don't know, it was special things. It would be interesting to ask her. He was the one who was overtly romantic, leaving
Mhm.
notes or writing down lyrics to songs that he likes and leaving
Oh, wow.
her, or but they would leave each notes. She would put a note in his suitcase when he went away on a business trip, or a chocolate bar, or you know
Yes.
so just those little things that say, I know we're not together, but I'm thinking of you. Like, but for me, it's the ongoing respect. Dean would
Yeah.
always call me to or send a note after he's traveled 2 hours to get somewhere. He sends me a note. I'm here.
Yeah.
It's not that it's
Thinking of you and
yeah, it's not the end
considering
of
you.
the world that he didn't do that. It's not like I'm
Mhm.
sitting here worried about him arriving. It's more
Thoughtfulness. Yeah.
thoughtfulness, thoughtfulness. And we're
Wow.
thoughtful about each other with everything, even
Mhm.
whether it's, making the bed, or, it's all the little things that you do in your partnership. We're thoughtful about each other.
And that's to me is romantic. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily about flowers,
Mhm.
dinners, and we that's not a big part of our lives, but it is the thoughtfulness and the communication and the little notes and the touch. We'll hold hands,
Yeah.
watch TV, and
Or
you know,
music comes on that we like, so we both dance.
dance and
Or,
Mhm.
it's those moments, those little ones, or,
But I
yeah,
am getting the big picture. It's a lot of considering the other person and thoughtfulness and compassion. So that was really well said. Thank you
she's
for
an
covering that.
extension of me, and I of her. And when we realize
Mhm.
it's like, you know, the golden rule: do to
do unto
others, do
others.
unto others as you would have them do to you. That's it.
Yeah.
It is the golden rule in every way.
And I guess for people who aren't naturally like that, not to be hard on themselves, because there's always other ways to show it, not necessarily by
Yeah.
coming up with the most creative idea, but
Yeah.
just being
It's,
thoughtful.
it's simplicity. It's the
But
simple
Yeah.
the
things.
number one thing is communication, and open and
Mhm.
honest and transparent and playful, and maintaining that, because once you lose
Yeah.
that, then you start to drift apart somewhat, and energetically, therefore the interest
Yeah.
starts to physically, probably there becomes excuses. It's different for everybody, for sure.
Right. But if
Absolutely no secrets. Never. There
yeah,
are no secrets, because
I
secrets
agree.
erode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because one thing leads to another, and then you're just covering up who you are and you're not open, your heart isn't open. I
Yeah.
can totally understand that.
Causes mistrust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dangerous, I think. Yeah.
So how much do you feel inspired by your partner, or how much growth between you happens day to day? Because I know we were talking about self growth, and we touched a little bit about how you're always growing together, but I guess, do you feel often inspired by each other, or does that happen, up and down through the cycles of periods of life? Because I wonder, for some people, there's just a lack of inspiration all the time. So what might be a good rhythm of feeling
Yeah.
inspired?
Oh,
I almost mean, how how do you feel like not dull? Because sometimes people get into this rhythm and or routine, I should say, where it just becomes dull. So I guess when I say inspired, I mean, how is that avoided?
Yeah.
I
Well, that's a
mean,
good question. I mean, it's kind of like, how do you shake things up a bit? You go a different route to work. You have to be willing to go a different way sometimes, or to shake it up, or to wake up in the morning and say, let's go do something else that's different today. So both of us try to inspire each other to break patterns, and because you get in this routine,
Yes.
to break patterns and to be willing to explore new things or to do different things. But that's a lifelong pursuit,
Yeah.
encouragement.
yeah.
Is that the main way, like to try new things to make it less dull, or even in your conversations with each other?
It's more about spontaneity too, being
Right.
spontaneous. So we don't, we, as I've said, we don't have a set time where you have to get up
Mhm.
every morning. It kind of varies depending on what we're doing. We don't eat
Yeah.
meals at the same time each day. We'll just
Mhm.
when we're hungry or when it's appropriate. It's about, if you lock into routine, and a lot of people, particularly as they get older, it's like, no, are you hungry? They look at their watch and say, well, it's not 6 o'clock yet, so
Yeah.
it's not dinner time. And it's like, I've seen that, and it's like, I look at that and go, I want to be spontaneous and
Yeah, we
just,
try to live off the clock for
yeah.
sure.
Because when you get locked into that routine, it becomes same old, same old.
And I just to add, I think almost because your own lives have kind of inspired rhythm to it, because you're leading by your heart and your passions. So I think that I think, in my opinion, that comes into play too, in keeping things alive, because you're so connected to your own source.
Mhm.
So naturally, when you come together, there's an inspired electric energy,
That's
versus
yeah.
feeling dead on the inside, going to work, hating work, and then you bring that energy into the relationship. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think, when you're committed to your own spiritual growth, you are committed to growth. You're committed to an upward spiral
Right.
of growth. So when you do that, and each of us are individually, but we also are in a spiritual relationship that's completely committed to supporting the other person
Mhm.
for their own spiritual growth. That's the difference between a spiritual relationship and one that isn't aware.
Yeah.
So it means that we're always investing in the expansion of the other person, however that is. So it's encouragement. Sometimes it's like, you're a great writer, have you thought about doing a blog, or, those kinds of
Yeah.
encouraging things, or you get so much joy out of gardening, maybe we should expand the garden next year. Those kinds of
Mhm.
things that see what brings joy and expansion to the other person, and you support it.
Yeah.
You say, yeah, I see you. Like, I love to plan for a vacation. That's one of my things. I'm a planner. So dreaming and planning and organizing a vacation. So, we love to talk about where we'd like to go next and what we might do, because,
Yeah.
that brings me a lot of joy to plan. So it's like you become aware of what the other person gets excited by,
Mhm.
and you do more of that
Yeah.
because it brings them joy.
Sounds good to me. Um, so some question that came up for me when you guys spoke last time: do you think someone can be connected on a soul level like you guys are, even if they haven't found themselves yet? Um, like, what I guess what I'm saying is, if someone is meant to be, do you think that they can grow with that person because they're so compatible, or no, they have to really find themselves first on their own before?
I think every relationship is a soul relationship. So
There's always
it's,
an opportunity to grow. It's
I
very
guess I meant soulmate, like the person that you're staying with. Like, do you think it's possible to be with that person and stay with them even if you haven't gotten to that point of
cool. I believe so.
cool.
I-
Yeah.
because there's a certain harmony there that is just naturally there, even if you haven't got spiritual awareness. There's a lot of people in relationships that may not be spiritually connected. I mean, we all are spiritual beings. We all are. May not be as spiritually connected, but their relationship is very healthy, and they've got the opportunity to grow and learn if they choose. But every relationship will present the challenges, because within those challenges are the golden nuggets of opportunity. So it's how you deal with them.
Yeah, I wanted to see what you guys would say about that, because there's a part of me that I feel like I've experienced, seeing other people who are just so connected, even though they haven't come to that self-realization, but they're with each other through time. And so you wonder, like, how come some people meet that soulmate, that forever soulmate, at a young age, and some people don't? But I think, again, that probably comes down to where they're at on a soul level. So
And it's the soul contract. We've talked
yeah.
about this before, that souls, we make contracts before we came here to come to have certain relationships and experiences, and you just tell when there's a resonance with someone else, no matter what your awareness is, whether you resonate, which is an energetic connection. It can be very fulfilling. That doesn't mean it won't have its challenges. Everyone does, but there's just something that's innately there between them that's inexplainable.
Yeah. Has your partner ever made you feel bad?
Oh, yeah. Relationships aren't easy, right?
Yeah, of course, that's going to happen in every relationship. Yeah.
That's a constant calibration, right?
Okay.
But again, our perspective is that when something comes up that makes you feel bad, it's an opportunity for your own growth.
Yeah.
So yes, the other may have done something or said something or, irritated the heck out of us, which can happen. But it's always to look at yourself first. What is it that's really going on? What is it that I'm, is happening? And then it's an opportunity for growth. So it's an opportunity to speak to the other about how you're feeling about that, or how,
And on the other side of that, it's usually projection. So the other one is projecting stuff onto the partner because they're the closest. And so there comes the eruption of whatever and the opportunity. But if you're not spiritually aware or aligned, then you're in the blame game and the victim game. And when you're in that game, you can't win.
It's not about being right or wrong, just about understanding, coming to a solution or a compromise.
Yeah.
We've witnessed is that every time it gets really difficult and we come to a conflict, and we come to resolution and talk about it and share about it, we learn something, we change our behavior, our understanding, and things get better. So it only ever gets better if you deal with the shit. So you have to.
And then it doesn't come up again, and something new might come up, but then you deal with that. But that's good to know that even a soulmate connection, that's normal. I think that's the most important thing to see from this, is that it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be a soulmate relationship.
Oh no, it's not supposed to be perfect.
Well, in actual fact, what my saying is, it is always perfect. Right, with whatever comes up is perfect, because I say that to a lot of our clients. They're going through this challenges or whatever. I say, well, that's perfect, because there's your opportunity. So perfection has been misunderstood as being this ideal, isn't it amazing? Well, that's not perfect. Perfection is life. Whatever is given to us in order for our own greater good is perfect, and that is often challenging.
So I was going to ask this later, but I feel like it's the perfect timing, about effortlessness, because I just always had this feeling that a successful, healthy relationship should be effortless. And when I say that to people, they're like, no, you have to put some effort. And I think it's subjective, right? Everybody thinks of effort as on a different level. So how is your relationship effortful, and how is it effortless?
Well, I would say from the very beginning, the overwhelming feeling I had was how natural and at home it felt. So from the very beginning, there wasn't effortlessness about it, because there was just harmony. There was
connection,
not a lot of conflict. It was easy. It was easy.
We right from the beginning, we were just able to accept each other for who we are and where we were at, and just be grateful for that. So it's effort. When you bring effort into it, that's usually from a place of judgment. If you're able to be non-judgmental and just understand what's going on, then the effort tends to be less. It's the effort. When there's effort, it's usually around judgment, is my feeling.
But also it was easy because we were in harmony. It's not like one of us wasn't a heavy drinker and the other one wasn't a heavy smoker, and the other one loved violent movies, and the other one, like our similarities were harmonious.
Our interests, our interests, what we read, what we like to read and watch and listen to, it was just naturally there. It was not, no, I like a bit more rock and roll than she does, but that's okay. but really, we like the same music. We like watching the same things. We like reading. So it's in that way, it's effortless.
It's effortless. And it really what it means is then our differences or our disharmonious things are kind of so minor that
Right.
they're issues. And
Okay.
he's like, yeah, great. You go have sushi. I'm not into sushi. You have that. So I go with my girlfriends to have sushi. It becomes my sacred thing to have sushi, right? Because he likes something else. So we share what we share. We respect how we're different. And
Yeah.
but I would say the thing that I love about this relationship than any I've ever had is the effortlessness of it.
That's kind of what I wanted to confirm.
That's the sign for me. If it's effortful, it's like you have to determine what's fixable and what isn't. And what's fixable is only ever within you. You can never fix
Yeah.
another person.
Yeah.
So, if Dean made a whole bunch of choices that were disharmonious with me, I couldn't be with him
Right.
because
That's too much effort.
it's too much effort and there's enough differences in the world. There's enough challenges to deal with
Disharmony. Yeah.
in the world than to have it be in your home because, you know, he's a meat eater and I'm a vegetarian and I like my
There's a general balance as opposed to stressors in the relationship. There's a general harmony
Mhm.
versus stress.
we love
So
we love to do the same things and if anything there's so much of that we have to bring in. We have to kind of go, I don't know, have you ever gone bowling? You want to go bowling? Like try to think about something different, because we actually really love doing the same things, but that creates so much peace and so much well-being. We enjoy
Mhm.
we enjoy the same food. We make our decisions are easy. Like I'm glad he doesn't like sushi because then it's my thing, right? And it's
I,
something
I don't I don't understand anyone who doesn't like sushi.
yeah, good. See, that's my thought too. Yeah. But
Do you make a lot of sacrifices, or is it very rare that you do? Because I think in the beginning you were saying that it's because you're so alike, you kind of rarely have to compromise.
our sacrifices are small.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, but I understand that people have scenarios where they're big. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean incompatible. You know,
Okay.
um, I think sometimes the sacrifices have to come, you know, can be huge, but it can actually bond you. So I guess it depends on each person's challenges, each person's scenarios, let's say. But for Dean and I, our sacrifices are outside of our relationship, not within our relationship.
Right. I'm curious, like, if you can think of a sacrifice, or if that's, again, if that's too personal. I don't know if that's
Oh, come on.
Well, I mean, you could, okay. Dean, we met in California and Dean moved to Ontario to be with me. You could say he sacrificed his entire life in Australia.
Mhm.
That's never been a huge burden that we've carried in our relationship. I mean, I guess if
Mm.
I walked out today and said, I'm sick of you, I don't want to be with you, then he would feel he had sacrificed his entire life in Australia to be here with
Yeah.
me. And, 20 years later, he might not be too
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much sacrificing within the relationship. I say sacrificed. I chose to be with Rebecca over everything else, which meant leaving my entire life for family, friends behind the other side of the world, which they couldn't really understand. But it was, was it a sacrifice? It was fairly natural and easy for me.
Mhm.
But it still, yeah, it's a whole different life, and I wouldn't change a thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's an interesting question. As far as sacrificing anything within the relationship, um, nothing,
No.
nothing is
Well,
glaring.
that's good
Yeah.
to know too. Yeah, because I find if people do need to make a lot of sacrifices, it's like, well, why? Because
Yeah.
if you're giving up so much of yourself, what does that say also?
And that can also create resentment because I've done this for you and you're not responding the way I want you to.
Mhm.
And you've got this messy energy that can get
Yeah,
caught up, and that's hard to navigate that
yeah,
that kind of
But
experience.
I understand people have other complexities maybe that we don't, whether it's cultural complexities or stepchildren or ex-wives, like there people have can have very complex scenarios that make it difficult to navigate a relationship. Commitment, big business commitment that, or physician,
yeah,
demanding careers that take
right.
away from the relationship. Our careers are now together in the same. So I know I understand that other people have complex
Yeah,
scenarios.
yeah.
Depends on what stage you are in life and how old you are and your life experiences and your upbringing. Like it's such a intricate thing, the relationship, and
Mhm.
they can be messy, but that doesn't mean they can't be successful either.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it depends, yeah, what
Yeah,
happens in the past. If you were in a relationship where a past relationship where your partner did up and leave you in one moment and left you high and dry, you would have high sensitivity to abandonment in a relationship, which can actually close you down from feeling safe and secure in a
yeah,
new relationship, and you can actually recreate the same thing again because you haven't healed from it happening before. So
yeah.
scenarios can get complicated if people don't clear their own wounds from the past.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing in entering a new relationship. You can't clean up everything perfectly because but it's really huge to deal with your old wounds, or you'll continue to repeat patterns that are difficult until you learn it.
Is there still an enigma for you about relationships? It's more of a fun question.
Yeah, I uh,
No?
I don't even know how to say it. It's like um, as much as you can know yourself, you can know another, but I don't know how you can ever really know another. Like I really
Mm.
like one of the things Dean doesn't like is when you say, "What are you thinking?" Right? He's like, like that's that question that women ask men. What
Yeah.
are you thinking? Really like to know what they're thinking. You've seen the memes and jokes. Don't ask him that because he's actually not thinking anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to tell you he's not thinking anything. But
Yeah.
I would love to to know. I would love to know him,
She wants to
and
get inside my head.
I would love to know him and understand him better. And I don't think I ever can. And that's an enigma.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, because sometimes there's a look on the face and you just want because women connect emotionally and they just want to understand.
Yes.
So there's this feeling like, I know you're thinking about something and I don't know what it is, and neither do you. And it's trying.
Yeah. And the other enigma is that he would never think that about me.
Yeah.
So it's an enigma that he would never wonder, what is she thinking? And oh, I would love to get in her head. I don't think that ever occurs to you, does it?
No, I just know when she's not present. I can tell when she's off somewhere else, and I'll say, "Hi, Earth to Becky,
Yeah.
Earth to Becky,
I
come
don't
back."
I don't really feel like having dinner by myself, even though you're sitting right there because you're not with me. Yeah.
It's really funny. And
Yeah.
for you, Dean, is there an enigma still or no?
um, I don't think so.
Would you like to understand women better
um,
or your partner better?
mm, I feel I have a pretty good handle on. I just, she
See?
I just let her be her. I mean, I'm not. It's just stuff. I don't want to need to share it with you. You don't need to know. It's just my inner state. There
Mhm.
could be anything that's
Yeah.
and there's times
But
it's
there's nothing that maybe still confuses you about women. Like maybe you're not confused so much about Rebecca, but maybe in general about women that as a man you will never understand.
um I'm not sure about that. It's hard to answer because I'm very in touch with the feminine aspect
Okay.
of myself.
Okay.
I understand what that is. So I've got the balance of the masculine, feminine. I can be a
Mhm.
guy's guy, and I can be in a room full of women and just me, and be totally comfortable
Mhm.
and blend, which I do a lot actually.
He
Mhm.
often is
I
because we
often,
host meditation groups that are often
Wow.
women,
I can
right?
be with 20 women and just me, and be totally comfortable and in my
Okay.
and totally. It doesn't
Mhm.
make any difference to me, man,
Mhm.
woman. So it's
Mhm.
just about the human experience and the human condition, and everybody's affected differently, man, woman. And so I don't really look at it that way,
Okay. All right.
if that
That's
makes sense.
cool. Yeah, it does. Very cool. I think just to say it though, I think most men are very confused about women.
Yeah, that's because they're confused about themselves.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really all it is. When you're clear and have that connection, then you can see with your inner eye, you can feel it, you can
Mhm.
sense it, you just know. But if you're confused and disconnected inside, well, that's what you're going to see. People will be as you choose to see them. That's
Is that just to we can touch on it at the end, but is that sort of the what's included in what you guys do? Is you help people to see with their inner eye?
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, we're all about it, helping
Hmm.
helping people connect to themselves and understand who
Hmm.
they are, remember who they are, understand
Hmm.
and to become aware of their programming and their issues that show up through the patterns that they've experienced in their life. And it's a process to and it's an ongoing one. So I've been working at it for 30 years, so and I'm still going. So
Mhm.
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah.
incredible. In the past, have you had feelings that someone is the one and turned out not to be?
Well, we both had relationships that, for extended periods. Beck got married. He thought he was the one.
Okay, so you did think he was the
I
one.
never got married because I was unsure she was the one. For 11
Yeah.
years, I still couldn't figure it out. At some
Yeah.
stage, someone said, well, if after 11 years, if you're still not asking to marry her, she mustn't be the one. And yet she was
Hmm.
a soulmate, but for different reasons. So um,
Yeah.
I've never had that.
I think
Mm.
you actually do know whether they're the one or not if you're really, really honest with yourself. Because I had a number of relationships that I knew they weren't the one, but it didn't mean I didn't enter into them and get
Mhm.
entangled and go on for a couple years, even though I knew I wasn't going to ride off into the sunset with them. So
Well,
um,
with me, she knew instantaneously the moment she saw me. So,
Yeah.
because there was a familiarity and
If you can give advice, like how would you know they're not?
because you ask whether they are or not.
So it comes down again to the questioning
and
and doubting.
it's not really your mind that will tell you. It's your body and how you feel, even if it's
Mm.
subtle. If there's something that's kind of, you think they're a good person, but there's something that you go, this, but I'm not sure about that. Then pay attention. That's all it takes.
Mhm.
Wow.
It's all it
So as
takes.
subtle as like just that small feeling of I'm not sure.
Because if you were
That's
sure, that wouldn't come into your mind.
huh.
I think you actually know really early on. I think you could even, I mean, this is like practically an impossibility, but you could even do an analysis of your first meeting or your first date and know if you really really listen to what he was saying, how it was, what was happening, whether you were shown respect, whether there was a connection or not. You could figure that out in that first drop
Hmm.
of water.
So if
Like
you're,
it's
yeah,
already there, like everything's already in the microcosm that would be in the macrocosm. And I think it's that we're not honest with ourselves enough and we're so desperate to find, or we think, you know, we're against the clock, or we're too uncomfortable to be with ourselves, alone with ourselves. Like there's all these pressures that make us not look at that, at it really honestly, that we would just know.
But on another level, like on a first date, so you've met this person and you go on your first date, and you know you feel very attracted to them physically, and you sit
Mhm.
down and you're sitting down with a guy, and he's sitting in the evening, you're sitting down and he's talking, and all he does is talk about himself, right? And doesn't ask you anything about you or your life, and all they do is focus on themselves. But you think, oh, what an interesting guy,
Or he's too busy
or he's
being a
too,
jokester,
or you
or
know,
Mhm.
interesting guy, and he's a nice looking guy. To me, that's a red flag, because if he hasn't asked you one thing about you, then he's kind of narcissistic and not. There's a red flag right from the beginning. But you've got
Unless the way that they talk is conversational and you end up uh, revealing things about yourself and they listen through the give and take, even if they don't ask questions, but through them conversing.
they show interest and convert,
Right.
exactly. But
Right.
if they, yeah, so there's little things, but you just
Hmm.
know. But if you just know, oh, it was good and it was a great, but I just didn't just seemed a bit weird.
Something.
So you might want to go out,
Mhm.
you know, the next time you'll be aware of that, and just pay attention and ask
Right.
questions. So you just know, and
Hmm.
a lot of women that we know
Wow.
have known this from the very beginning, but they've gone ahead, and my sister was one. They go ahead anyway, thinking they're taking on a project and they can change the other person, or they can change the guy.
fatal
Fatal
mistake.
mistake.
No one
Yeah.
ever change. You know how difficult it is to change ourselves? What's the chance that we would ever change another? So
Mm.
that's a really critical,
That's
critical
a tough
thing.
path. So that's what a lot do, though. Oh, I love him, but I know this about him, which I don't like, but I think I can change him. That was a classic for my sister.
Well,
Also, I think women do so much of the work. They do the communication work. They're the ones who do the planning. So what if you know, it's like do 51% and expect him to do 51% and then go with the overlap. But women end up doing like 89% of the work. You know, the affection, the planning, the communication, all that stuff. And you realize if you just stop that one day and there's nothing, then it's
yeah.
not an equal relationship.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I used to complain about in my early days of dating is men would just not ask personal questions. And I'd be like, what is this?
That's a sign.
So
Yeah.
that's a big one. But I guess just to end it, I'm curious because it's almost um goes hand in hand with red flags because there are some relationships, maybe it's not a soulmate, but it is more on the effortless side and it is a feel good relationship. Um, and there might not be as many red flags, but then they might have that a little bit of the questioning. So, how do you know when it's time to move on versus, you know what, this is okay? Like, I'm satisfied.
You can only trust your own instincts in the now moment. You
Yeah.
really go, is something that's very difficult to think through. All we encourage people to do is just trust what you
Mhm.
feel in the moment. If it feels
Mhm.
right, it feels in alignment, or then trust that. But if there's that feeling that you're going, as soon as you start questioning, then that's a sign.
Well, and always default to having your own back, to caring about yourself, to thinking about what is it that I need, that I'm not looking for another to fulfill. So if
Yeah.
you have your own back and you have your own needs, then you won't fall, you know, which because the fear of falling or the feeling of being without or being alone is what keeps people connected for longer than they needed to get the lesson, whatever
Okay.
the lessons were. And all relationships are to teach us things. And sometimes the lessons come quickly, and sometimes it's a much longer journey. But you know, having learned what I've learned, you know, like for instance, if I had a daughter, you know, or a son or a daughter now to teach, it would be um, to always have a long-term perspective on you, on your life, and
Yeah.
what it is that you want. And if that, I would encourage them to be a little bit more, I don't mean selfish, but self-focused, that they always had their own back. And then relationships are a bonus to that. They're an expression of that. They're an add-on. They're not any form of dependence or completion. That's an illusion.
But do you suggest if someone does feel like something is off, but it does feel nice and it is good, it would be counterintuitive almost to be like, oh, I'm just going to leave, even when you feel good.
Yeah.
So in that case, do you
Honest,
just take a space and take a step back, like, and you don't leave it yet, or?
I would say on self-honesty first. Be really honest with yourself about it, and then with the person. You know, I was in a relationship with somebody on a longer term, through like 3 years, who was much more committed to the relationship than I was. And but I just kept saying that. I kept saying, I love being with you now. I know that I'm not going to ride off into the sunset with you. It was just too complicated. He had children, he's
Mhm.
French, lived for, I wasn't going to move. And,
Yeah.
it was
Hmm.
too complicated. So I said, if you're willing to be in the relationship for now, to enjoy the time that we do have together, then that works for me. And if it doesn't, then we need to say goodbye.
Mhm.
Right. So, but I was always, and he would try to renegotiate. Oh, why don't you try coming? Oh, why don't you come and learn French? Oh, wouldn't you love to go on my vacation with my children? Actually, no, I don't want to be a stepmother to
If
children.
you didn't know those answers yet, would you have just taken a step back and just spent less time and just had more focus on yourself, but still engaged with the person, or
Yeah,
would you have just cut it off?
I would have been much more respectful of the fact that he actually wanted way more than I was willing to give.
Okay.
I think I was the one who needed to call the relationship because I was
Mhm.
less invested. And I was the one
Right.
who actually needed to say, you know what, I know you really care, but I know you
Mhm.
would like to build something more, and I'm not going to lead you on. I'm not going to act as if that's a possibility, because it isn't. And when the relationship ended, he actually thanked me for being so honest,
Not leading him on. Yeah.
not leading him on. And he said, my lesson is that I was in denial. I just didn't want to believe.
Mhm.
I was hoping you would change. And that's always the fault that happens, right? You believe the other one's going to change.
But neither of you had a situation where you just wasn't sure and you just took a step back, but you stayed in the relationship?
Yeah,
Didn't,
that happened in my major relationship. There were
right.
times when I had to separate from it because I was so confused. And
How did you do that? How,
well, I kind of I just separated myself from her. We kind of say broke up for a little bit. We kind of had to. I had to step away
Mhm.
to really reevaluate. We ended up getting back together, me thinking things would change, but they didn't. And
Mhm.
ultimately, it, it didn't go. And I kind of knew it wasn't, because I knew, when you know, and I didn't know. So that was a sign for me that I just didn't know. I was too young and immature, didn't know how to handle it, didn't know, what to say. Or so it would have been as hard on her as it was on me. So
When is it worth it to keep going? And when, in your opinion, is it worth it not to?
I
yeah,
think the advice I would give to my younger self is to actually be more courageous, to be on my own more.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
I think I strung relationships out long because of my fear of being alone than because so I actually caused more pain because I didn't I didn't I didn't call it sooner and say, you know what, this isn't working for me. And that was immaturity, and I didn't want to hurt them, and I didn't want to hurt myself, and I didn't want to be alone, and all those reasons. Then I strung it along, and consequently I I I I didn't invest in myself enough and in my own ability to be on my own and to be independent without a relationship. That's the advice I'd give to my younger self. Don't string it along because you don't want to be, you don't want to not be in a relationship. It's okay. You're in your most important relationship in the world is with yourself, not another.
But I think you've got to weigh up the pros and cons within the relationship. And if there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of good things, then they're to be acknowledged and treasured. And when you look at the cons or the areas that maybe you struggle with, you've got to look at that and say, well, are they really a big deal? A lot of the stuff in relationships, it's small stuff.
Right.
But what it's doing is triggering old stuff at a deeper level, which makes it bigger than what it is. So you've got to look at the pros and cons. And yes, am I perfect? No. Is she perfect? No. But we understand and have come to accept those. And as I say, the differences between us are laughable. They're laughable, and that's what you've got to look at. Because if something's happening from the other person that is triggering you, and yet it might be a small thing like being a little messy or whatever. That's probably not a good example, but you've got to weigh up the extent of the issue to that you don't like to depend. Well, would I leave them because of this? No. Can we work with this? Yes. Because there's a lot of other good stuff that I really love. So you don't
So
throw
it's worth growing within yourself and keeping it going if that's still there. Yeah.
And you'll know at a soul level whether this person is meant for you or not. And even if you are with someone or you marry someone and they end up not being long term, that doesn't mean they weren't the one. Actually, they were the one for that period of your life and your relationship.
And there was something else I saw once that might be interesting for you. It was a CBC documentary called Brain Sex. But it was a series on CBC that was about how a woman's brain is different than a man's brain, that it physiologically is different.
Wow.
You know, how the synapses and whatever, and then how that creates a different brain or a different perception. For instance, a woman's ability to perceive multiple things at once, whereas a man has a linear brain that thinks only of one thing at a time. So I know I can't talk to Dean in one sentence. For instance, I can't say, oh, well, let's go shopping tomorrow because I want to stop here and here. And then maybe on the way home, we'll do that. And we probably need gas. Oh, how about are the tires flat? Right. And he's kind of like, whoa, like to him, that's too much. Right. You can't talk about 7 different things at once. And because that's not how his brain works.
That's very interesting.
Watching this series thinking, in fact, I'd like to see it again because it's been like 15 years since I saw it, but it helped me understand a little bit better how we're different, right?
Wow, I need to watch that.
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can find it. Maybe even now it's on YouTube or something like that. So I'll see if I can find it and I'll send
Yes,
you the link
if you
because
find
I'd
it,
like
let
to
me
watch it
know.
again because it was more of a physiological explanation that then affected us psychologically, how we're different. And the other, of course, is men are from Mars, women are from Venus, because we have totally different approaches to.
Aside from the different approaches, I would never be able to tell that you guys think differently because you guys are so in sync.
Yeah, well, we do. Yeah, we do. So, I mean, we work together harmoniously, but we have a different style, different approach, different. I'm more emotionally driven, and which are very Venus and Mars pure definitions of. I emote in order to figure something out. So a woman wants to just be able to share what it is that she's feeling and be heard. He doesn't have to solve it for her. She solves it by emoting it, right? And they call it in Men Are From Mars.
That's what I always say. I just need to say.
Mars, Women Are From Venus it's called circling. So we need to just express them all, and then by the end,
Wow, I need to read this book.
well, it helped me, I remember. Whereas a man doesn't solve things by, emoting. Another one I remember was the cave. Guys need to go into a cave. So in order to figure stuff out, they don't emote and they don't want to come towards you and talk about it. They want to go away into a cave and figure it out. And women cannot go hang out at the outside of the cave waiting for him to come out, because that's not what he wants. He wants to know he can go and figure it out himself. So, some of those basic things have helped me. Right?
That's so interesting. That would help for a lot of people to know so that they're aware of what's happening and they don't fuel the argument.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we chase them way too much.
Yeah.
We need to be far more aloof and elusive
Yes.
than we are. We're too easy. That's what I say to him. I'm just too easy. And he rolls his eyes like, oh yeah, sure. Easy? Yeah.
I resonate with you. I feel like I'm a lot like that.